May 1, 1960. A crisp spring morning over Soviet territory, an American U-2 spy plane flies silently at the edge of space, 70,000 feet above the ground. No Soviet fighter could reach this altitude, no missile could touch this aircraft. At least that's what the United States believed. Francis Gary Powers knew his mission was dangerous, but he didn't know how close he was to becoming the center of an international crisis that would shake the foundations of the Cold War. The U-2 spy plane was unlike any aircraft ever built. Designed by Kelly Johnson at Lockheed's famous Skunk Works, it was a marvel of engineering, a glider-like aircraft with an impossibly long wingspan and an incredibly fragile design. Its entire purpose was to fly higher than any other plane, photographing Soviet military installations with crystal-clear precision. Powers wasn't just any pilot. He was part of a top-secret CIA program designed to penetrate the Soviet Union's most heavily guarded airspace. These missions were so sensitive that pilots like him were given special suicide devices, a silver dollar with a needle containing a deadly poison in case they were ever captured. The mission seemed routine. Take off from Pakistan, fly a predetermined route over Soviet industrial and military sites, and land in Norway. The U-2's cameras would capture detailed intelligence about Soviet missile sites, military bases and industrial complexes. Information that could mean the difference between peace and potential nuclear war. But something was different that day. Soviet air defenses were more advanced than American intelligence had predicted. As Powers flew over the Ural Mountains, a surface-to-air missile system locked onto his aircraft. The Soviet ground crews had been waiting, watching, preparing. Suddenly multiple SA-2 missiles streaked into the sky. Unlike previous attempts, these missiles could actually reach the U-2's incredible altitude. Powers heard the explosions. He felt the aircraft shake. Then, catastrophically, his right wing was torn away. What happened next would become one of the most dramatic moments of the Cold War. Powers knew he was going down over Isle territory. He began emergency procedures, but not the ones the CIA had originally planned. The original protocol was brutal. Destroy the plane, destroy all intelligence, and if possible kill yourself to prevent capture. But Powers made a different choice. He didn't destroy the plane completely. He didn't use his suicide device. Instead, he prepared to eject and face whatever came next. When he landed, Soviet troops were waiting. Within hours, the Soviet government did something shocking. They announced to the world that they had shot down an American spy plane and captured its pilot. The United States was caught completely off guard. Initially, they tried to claim it was a weather research aircraft that had accidentally drifted off course. But the Soviets displayed the plane's wreckage and Powers himself, proving the elaborate lie. President Eisenhower, who had personally authorized these spy missions, was stunned. The carefully constructed facade of deniability had collapsed. Powers had been flying a mission so secret that even the U.S. government was prepared to disavow any knowledge of it. The incident would become a pivotal moment in Cold War tensions. The Soviet Union used Powers' capture as propaganda, showing the world American espionage tactics. The United States was humiliated, its most sophisticated spy plane shot down over enemy territory. Powers would spend the next 21 months in Soviet prison, subjected to intense interrogation, but he had been trained well. Despite tremendous pressure, he revealed minimal classified information. In February 1962, he was ally exchanged for a Soviet spy in a dramatic prisoner swap on the Glenik Bridge in Berlince, a location that would become famous as the Bridge of Spies. The U-2 incident changed everything. It exposed the fragile tensions between the United States and Soviet Union. It demonstrated that no technology was truly invincible, and it showed how a single mission could dramatically alter international relations. But the story of Francis Gary Powers was far more complex than a simple tale of espionage and capture. His mission represented a critical moment in the escalating technological and psychological warfare between superpowers. The U-2 reconnaissance program wasn't just about gathering intelligence, it was about understanding the strategic capabilities of the Soviet nuclear arsenal. Each mission risked not just one pilot's life, but potentially triggering a global nuclear confrontation. Powers understood this weight every time he flew over Soviet territory. During his imprisonment, Powers experienced a systematic Soviet interrogation process designed to break his spirit and extract critical information. Soviet intelligence officers used psychological manipulation, isolation, and complex questioning techniques. They wanted to understand not just what Powers knew, but how the American intelligence apparatus operated. Despite intense pressure, Powers remained remarkably composed. His CIA training had prepared him for exactly this scenario. He revealed strategic disinformation while protecting the most sensitive details about U.S. reconnaissance capabilities. Each carefully crafted response was a small victory in an intricate psychological chess match. The Soviet legal system treated Powers as both a criminal and a propaganda opportunity. His trial was a carefully staged public spectacle, broadcast internationally to embarrass the United States and demonstrate Soviet technological and intelligence prowess. Yet Powers maintained his dignity, offering limited testimony that revealed just enough to satisfy Soviet prosecutors without compromising American security protocols. Meanwhile, in Washington, the incident created profound political tremors. The Eisenhower administration's credibility was severely damaged. Their initial attempts to deny the mission's purpose had been systematically dismantled by Soviet evidence. Intelligence agencies were forced to reevaluate entire reconnaissance strategies. The technological implications were equally significant. The successful interception of a U-2 proved that Soviet air defense systems were more advanced than Western intelligence had previously believed. Military strategists on both sides began reassessing their understanding of aerial surveillance capabilities. The CIA's response was multi-layered. While publicly embarrassed, they were privately analyzing every detail of Powers' capture. What had gone wrong? How could future missions be protected? The U-2 incident would drive massive investments in more advanced reconnaissance technologies, including satellite imaging and improved electronic intelligence gathering. Powers' personal experience became a microcosm of larger Cold War dynamics. He was simultaneously a trained professional, a potential political liability, and an unexpected diplomatic asset. His measured responses during captivity and subsequent public statements demonstrated remarkable resilience. The prisoner exchange on the Glynnick Bridge became symbolic of Cold War negotiation tactics. This narrow bridge connecting West Berlin to Potsdam would become legendary, a literal and metaphorical crossing point between opposing ideological worlds. Powers' return was not just a personal moment, but a carefully choreographed international performance. After his return, Powers faced complex psychological and professional challenges. How does a spy reintegrate after such a high-profile mission? The CIA was simultaneously protective of him and wary of potential security risks. Public perception was mixed. Some viewed him as a hero, others as someone who had compromised national security. His subsequent years were marked by attempts to understand and contextualize his experience. He wrote a memoir, testified before congressional committees, and gradually became a respected voice in discussions about Cold War intelligence operations. The U-2 incident represented more than a single mission's failure. It symbolized the increasingly complex world of international espionage, where technology, psychology, and political strategy intersected in dangerous and unpredictable ways. Powers had inadvertently become a crucial character in one of the 20th century's most complex geopolitical narratives, a human embodiment of the tensions, risks, and unwritten rules of Cold War confrontations. In the decades following his dramatic capture and release, Francis Gary Powers continued to grapple with the profound legacy of that single mission. His life after the U-2 incident was a complex tapestry of redemption, reflection, and gradual public understanding. After leaving the CIA, Powers sought to rebuild his professional identity. He worked as a helicopter pilot in Los Angeles, a role that seemed far removed from the high-stakes international espionage that had deadened his most famous moment. Yet the shadows of his past never fully disappeared. His memoir, Operation Overflight, published in 1970, provided a deeply personal account of the mission and its aftermath. The book was more than a simple narrative of events. It was a nuanced exploration of Cold War complexities, individual agency, and the human cost of geopolitical tensions. Powers' family bore the emotional weight of his experiences. His wife Barbara and son Francis Gary Powers, Jr. witnessed firsthand how a single mission could transform a person's entire life trajectory. They supported him through the years of public scrutiny, personal doubts, and eventual rehabilitation of his reputation. Interestingly, Soviet archives eventually revealed details that partially vindicated Powers. Declassified documents showed that his aircraft had been at an altitude far higher than Soviet claims, and that his survival of the shootdown was itself a testament to his extraordinary training and composure. By the 1970s, Powers had become an unexpected historian of Cold War intelligence operations. Academic conferences, military symposiums, and intelligence community gatherings sought his insights. His unique perspective bridged the gap between operational secrecy and historical understanding. The technological landscape that had defrayed his mission continued to evolve. Satellite reconnaissance gradually replaced high-altitude aerial photography, rendering the U-2 missions increasingly obsolete. Yet Powers remained a critical link to an era of extraordinary technological and geopolitical transformation. His son would later establish the Cold War Museum, ensuring that the complex narratives of that period would not be forgotten. Francis Gary Powers, Jr. carried forward his father's legacy of understanding, rather than condemning the human dimensions of international conflict. In 1977, Powers tragically died in a helicopter crash while working as a traffic reporter for a Los Angeles television station. The irony was not lost on those who knew his history. A man who had survived one of the most dangerous missions in Cold War history, ultimately falling victim to a civilian aviation accident. His death prompted renewed reflection on his contributions. Military historians and intelligence experts began reassessing the U-2 incident not as a failure, but as a critical moment of technological and diplomatic interaction. Powers was increasingly viewed as a professional who had performed remarkably under unprecedented pressure. The Soviet Union's eventual collapse in 1991 brought further perspective to his experiences. Many of the rigid ideological boundaries that had debated his mission suddenly seemed distant and abstract. The world Powers had navigated with such precision had fundamentally transformed. Posthumous honors gradually recognized his complex role. The CIA eventually acknowledged his professionalism and commitment, awarding him commendations that had been withheld during the immediate aftermath of his mission. His story became a nuanced case study in Cold War intelligence operations. More than a spy narrative, Powers' journey represented a profound human story of resilience, adaptation, and understanding. He had been thrust into a global confrontation, survived its most extreme pressures, and emerged with dignity and insight. His legacy transcended simple heroism or villainy. Powers embodied the human element within grand geopolitical struggles, and individual navigating extraordinary circumstances with courage, professionalism, and an underlying commitment to understanding rather than judgment. As historical perspectives continued to evolve, Francis Gary Powers remained a powerful symbol of an era dead by technological innovation, ideological conflict, and the deeply personal stories hidden within global confrontations. The U-2 incident would be remembered not just as a moment of Cold War tension, but as a complex human narrative about courage, professional integrity, and the invisible lines that separate nations, ideologies, and individual experiences. His daughter Lindsay Powers would later reflect on her father's journey, understanding that his life was far more than a singular moment of international tension. Through family conversations and personal research, she pieced together a complex portrait of a man who was both a strategic professional and a deeply human individual. The National Security Archives gradually released more documents, revealing the intricate diplomatic negotiations that followed his downing. These revelations demonstrated how Powers' mission and subsequent capture were far more nuanced than initial Cold War narratives suggested. Academic researchers began treating his experience as a critical case study in international relations, examining how individual actors navigate complex geopolitical landscapes. Powers represented more than a spy or a pilot. He embodied the human intersection between national strategies and personal courage. Future generations would increasingly understand that Cold War narratives were not simply about grand ideological conflicts, but about individuals making challenging decisions under extraordinary pressures. Power's story illuminated these human dimensions, showing how personal integrity could transcend political boundaries. His grandchildren would grow up understanding their grandfather not as a mythical figure but as a complex human being who had confronted unprecedented challenges with remarkable composure. They preserved his personal artifacts, correspondence, and memories, ensuring that the nuanced humanity behind historic moments would not be forgotten. As global tensions continued to evolve in the 21st century, Power's story remained a powerful reminder that behind every geopolitical confrontation are individuals making difficult choices, navigating uncertain terrain with professionalism and dignity. His legacy was ultimately about human resilience, the capacity to maintain one's integrity and understanding even when caught in the most challenging of circumstances.